Hi there, Shruti. So thank you for sending in your essays. Let's take a look at what you wrote. Task 2 is about longer working hours and if they create a more economic success in a country. Here's what you said. Experts throughout both the developing and developed world have debated whether countries are far more successful with employees working a long time or those who have shorter work timings. All right, this is awkward, the grammar here. I know this can be a little tricky when you use whether, so we have to kind of fix this sentence a little bit, all right? Why don't we try that? So, have debated whether countries are far more successful with employees working a long time or with those who work less, okay? Alternatively, what else could you have said? You could have said whether countries are far more successful when employees work long hours or not. Okay? Maybe that could have worked too. But this structure was awkward and inaccurate. Let's move on. Some economists believe that countries are making a fortune when you wrote where countries are making a fortune when people work overtime. Personally, I strongly disagree. Now, I see this quite a bit. I really think that this needs a linker to show contrast. A comma doesn't do enough. I really believe that this needs a however or a yet or a but, because you've got two opposing arguments here, two different sides of this issue. So to have just a comma, I think it needs a little bit more. All right, let's move on. This essay will discuss both sides using examples from the UK government and Oxford University to demonstrate points and prove arguments. Okay, lovely. On the one hand, there is ample evidence that long working hours can benefit the country monetarily. The central reason behind this is twofold. Firstly, the work gets completed faster when employees work round the clock, which is a great cost-effective method. All right, why is it a great cost-effective method? Explain that to us. Secondly, while the company makes profits, the employees also work hard in order to achieve promotions and perks. For example, the recent empirical research by the UK government demonstrated that 90% of the top countries, which largely contribute, this should probably need no S here, to the UK's economy, work all throughout the week, even on Sundays. I would have liked a comma here. Therefore, it is conclusively clear that the impact of working long hours, get rid of for, can make astronomical revenues for any country. Okay, so I read through this like 2 or 3 times because I wanted to just understand your argument here. Now, I understand the first one fine, even though I thought it needed to be developed a little bit more, but I did have a big question mark regarding this argument. You say that the company makes profits, but the employees work hard for promotions and perks. So when you say that, I expect your support to be about these promotions and perks. Instead, you say that 90% of the companies that contribute to the UK economy work throughout the week, even on Sundays. So yes, that example is on topic and it deals with the economic success of the country. What the main idea didn't really relate to this. Like, I felt like these were from two different, they weren't related to each other, essentially. Here you're talking about the company making profits and people working hard for perks. And then here you say that the top earning companies work on Sundays. So I didn't really, maybe this was the problem, is achieving promotions and perks. There was just something that didn't really quite flow. So that's something that could actually affect your score in 2 different places. It could affect in coherence and cohesion because there wasn't a logical flow of ideas, but also could affect task achievement because the examiner could say, well, this isn't really, on topic, or some of this isn't really answering the question directly. So you have to be careful about that kind of thing. Okay. All right. Let's see. And then you said, therefore, it is conclusively clear the impact of working long hours can make astronomical revenues. I don't know about this expression either, make astronomical revenues. I want to double check this, but I don't believe that make collocates with revenue. So that's when we'll have to think about, find a better alternative here for make, okay? Let's go on. On the other hand, although there is a case for employees' long average working time benefiting the economy of the country, the impact of working for short hours cannot be overstated. All right, good. For example, an extensive study by Oxford University showed that about 60% of the workers who worked more than 6 hours, what? Who worked more than 6 hours than their allotted time. There's something happening here with the grammar. It didn't really make sense. Let's see. About 60% of the workers who worked more than their allotted time of 6 hours, or who worked longer than their 6-hour shifts. That makes sense, but what you wrote here didn't really quite work. Showed decreased energy and slow functioning of their brain, while those who worked within limits showed optimum results. Consistent with this line of thinking is that considerable amount of errors and mistakes can be found when tired employees are made to work, comma, creating losses which could have been avoided. Thus, it is possible to state beyond doubt that a well-rested and active mind can yield good performance, which ultimately has a tremendous impact on the country's economy. I'm glad you mentioned the country's economy. You mentioned it here at the end. You mentioned it here at the beginning. There's nothing really here in the middle that refers to it. I think there were other things that you could have said in this paragraph that were more related to the economy of the country. For example, if people are exhausted and they need to take sick leave, this is going to cost the country. All right, the country is paying for this essentially. Or, you know, if people have injuries on the job because they were exhausted, or if they're hospitalized for exhaustion, this is going to affect the country's economy. So that would have been more, I think, on topic than maybe some of this. I mean, you did link it back, but I really kind of feel like the link was a little tenuous. I mean, it wasn't totally 100%. You're really talking about the quality of life of employees, which didn't really fit this idea of economic success. Again, there are ways you could have done that, but I felt like this was lacking just a little bit in connecting those pieces. Let's take a look here now at your conclusion. To conclude from the arguments and examples given, I firmly believe that although grinding for I don't know what you mean here by grinding. I would prefer a different word here, 100%. For a long period of time can be fruitful, the role of smart working for less time is more practical and reliable. It is predicted that implementation of better work disciplines, I don't know what this means. What do you mean by this, better work disciplines? Keeping in mind the health and well-being of its employees. Who is its? By most governments will increasingly grow in importance. All right, so this is a good essay, Shruti. There's a lot of nice elements, but it is an essay that, as you can see from my suggestions, it is something that needs a little work. Some of the task achievement is questionable, some of the grammar, some of the vocabulary. I mean, I don't want you to misunderstand. It is a good essay, but it's an essay that I think could be made even better and could potentially get you the score you need if you make those improvements. Okay? So that's a little bit about that. You could see that it flowed nicely. I didn't really struggle with too much. There were a couple of areas where there was some incoherence, okay? And we addressed those. But all in all, it's an essay that is on the right track. Let's take a look at your task 1 here. This is about the shoes, right? Yes, okay. The bar chart shows sales of 2 types of shoes, brown leather and black leather, in 9 European, not the 9, because it's not just 9 European countries, it's 9 European countries. Namely France, UK, Germany, Ireland, Holland, Belgium, Poland, Hungary, and Italy in the year 2018. Poland's brown leather shoe sales were almost twice that of France's brown leather shoes sales. Brown shoe sales, there we go. Whereas in Belgium it was 15 times smaller at just around 5,000 sales. Okay, let me take a look at your data here. All right, so Poland, where's Poland? There it is. You start with Poland. It's twice France. Okay, there's France. And then you talk about Belgium, which is just, all right. So you're making us do a little math here, I can see. Let's move on. The sales of brown leather shoes in UK and Holland were considerably similar. That doesn't really, we don't say that considerably similar. We just say we're similar, but not considerably. It just doesn't fit right in terms of a collocation. Exactly 100,000 sales of brown leather shoes were in Ireland, and just over 100 sales were in Italy. All right, this too feels a little awkward to me, Shruti. So the X sales were in Ireland. Rephrase it a little differently so it sounds a little more natural. You could have said instead, in Ireland, there were 100,000 shoe sales, or you could say Ireland had exactly 100,000 brown shoe sales. All right, that makes a little more sense. It's a little more natural. The sales of black leather shoes in the UK, almost doubled. No, you can't use doubled. And the reason why is because this is an action verb. We're not really, there's no motion, there's no action happening here. This is really what we just call it's almost like a screenshot. It's like a snapshot of what's happening at this particular moment in 2018. So to use the word double implies that things are changing over time, and nothing here is changing over time, okay? So instead, you don't want to use the verb double, but you want to say that something was double. So why don't we try that? The sales of black leather shoes in the UK were almost double those of Holland. Okay? Germany and Ireland's black leather shoe sales were alike. Black leather shoes in Italy compared to Belgium and Poland. I don't understand that. In Italy compared to, that's awkward. You can't use respectively like this. When you use respectively, it has to be, how can I say this? Kind of like on the same side of the verb, if that makes any sense. So, yeah, let's see. You could have said something like, mid-range sales were found in Italy, Belgium, and Poland at this, and this respectively. Okay, this is what I mean by like being on the same side of the verb. But this kind of structure that you used here is not appropriate here. Okay, let's look at your overview. Overall, brown leather shoe sales, not an S here because it's acting like an adjective, were greater than all other. Brown leather shoe sales were greater than all other. That doesn't really make sense. What are you saying? That brown leather shoe sales were greater than countries? We're not comparing brown leather shoes to countries. We're comparing brown leather shoe sales to black leather shoe sales. And so this needs to be really, really clear. Okay? So I think let's try that. Overall, brown leather shoe sales were greater than black shoe sales in all countries except for UK, Hungary, and Italy, where they were, what does that mean? We're slightly dipped. What dipped? Right? As I just said to you, there is no action happening here. All right, so you need to use adjectives more. So you want to say something like where they were slightly less. That's a more appropriate way of saying this. Poland had, it's past tense. Everything here so far has been the past tense. Poland had the highest sales in brown leather shoes, whereas the least sales in black leather shoes was in France. All right, one of the things that I want to do, Shruti, is I want to make sure that you've talked at least once by name of all the 9 countries. So you did that here. So that's important, okay? That was a good thing to do. It's really easy to miss one of the countries when you're describing. So you writing them all out in the beginning was a smart thing to do. I have a couple of issues with this task 1. First of all, you started talking about Poland, but you never really explained to us why you were talking about Poland. So we didn't have that frame of reference. We didn't know that Poland had the highest brown leather shoe sales. That was important to mention. And since it was the highest, I don't think it's enough to just say that it was twice as much as France. I think you should just tell us what that number is, and then you can tell us that it's twice as much as France, and then we can do that math and figure out what France's number is. Okay? But it's really important to kind of put a signpost to these important numbers, the highest, the lowest, and so forth, even the second highest in some cases. Okay? So that for me was missing. And then when you talked about Belgium, why are you talking about Belgium? Tell us that it was the lowest figure. In fact, it's the lowest figure in the entire chart. And I think that's worth mentioning. Okay? Because otherwise you're mentioning Belgium. Here's the thing. I want you to imagine that the person reading this does not have that chart in front of him or her. That they're just reading this and they're trying to gain this information based solely on your description. And this is how you need to write it. You need to write it as if the person doesn't have it in front of them. So that means you have to really emphasize those important points there, the highs, the lows, and express them as such. Okay? And in a chart like this, really, what's the most important thing? It's these highs, it's those two lows there, and then the rest of it is essentially like a mishmash of information. Okay? Not super, super important. Do you have to talk about it? Well, yeah, a little. But the really key things here are these other points. So let me give you an example of how you could write this in a way that's really, really clear. You focus on all the key information, okay? And emphasize it. So here's what I would do first of all. Personally, I prefer let me say that again. I prefer to start talking about black leather shoes because it's the highest figure on the chart. Okay, and I would say that. So I would start by saying that the highest number of black leather shoes were sold in Hungary at whatever that number is. It's around 140,000 shoes. This was the highest number of shoes sold in any country of any color. Full stop. It was followed closely by Italy with 25,000 black leather shoe sales. Okay? Or in fact, if you want to make it even cleaner, you could say, as for black leather shoes, the highest, you can say what I just said, okay? To make it clearer that the whole paragraph will be talking about black leather shoes. Then I would say the least black leather shoes, the least number of black leather shoes was sold in France at whatever that number is. It looks like it's about 35,000. Okay? And then I would say the remaining countries, and then name them X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, all sold between, and look at these numbers, 50,000 and 100,000. Okay? So essentially a person listening to this or reading this can more or less map out the information that you're providing. And then I would do something similar with the brown leather shoes. I would say that as for brown leather shoes, Poland sold the most with blah, blah. Okay, it was followed, you could say actually 3 other countries also sold above 100,000, specifically ABC. Okay, and then you could say what those numbers are. Then you could say the lowest figure on the chart was found in Belgium for brown leather shoes at whatever that number is. And then again, you could say that the remaining countries, and you don't even have to name them at this point because you already have, also between 50 and 100,000 shoes. And you're done. It's a nice way to do it. It's a clean way to do it, and you're highlighting. It allows for some variation in your grammar and your sentence structure. All right? Give it a try. It's one way to do it. It's not the only way. Okay, there are certainly there are infinite ways to do this, but it's one way that might help you with this kind of structure. Okay? Go ahead and correct these. I'm looking forward to you continuing with the course and sending us more essays, so we'll be waiting for it. Good luck to you.